Welcome back to the Masters of the Universe Classics Director's Commentary with me, your host, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich. I was the brand manager for about 90% of Masters of the Universe Classics, and that's why in this series we're going figure by figure, talking about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. And if you hadn't figured it out by that image, we're talking about Mekaneck. Mekaneck. He is one of the more well-known secondary heroes for Masters of the Universe, having appeared in Filmation and 2000X, and, well, he actually tends to be one of the more recognizable characters, and a big part of that is because of his really cool, unique action feature, especially for the time. Masters of the Universe in the 80s kind of almost not inventing the action feature. That might go back to G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu Grip, but the action features that figures had in the 80s were very memorable, and Mekaneck tends to stand out as one of those middle-of-the-road guys that came out midway through the line, much like Manny Faces there, and he tends to show up in almost all Masters of the Universe toy lines, because, I mean, come on, it's Mekaneck. He's awesome, and he's got very visual colors, and okay, well, let's face it, it all comes down to his neck, his expanding neck power, which always made me question, when they had Masters of the Universe Pez dispensers, how did they not do a Mekaneck Pez? I mean, come on, you just paint the whole thing silver and it looks like it's all his neck. Missed opportunity. Alright, well, going back to his origins, Mekaneck, like Merman, is one of those figures that borrows parts. Or more like Stinkor. Stinkor and Merman shared the same head sculpt in the vintage line, and, well, actually, continuing along Stinkor's, use or reuse of other parts, he reused Mekaneck's armor. So, yeah, Mekaneck and Stinkor, much like Stinkor and Merman, share parts in the vintage line. Stinkor just used everyone else's parts. But we first got this armor with Mekaneck before it was repurposed as an anti-smelling device. So he did have it first, and since he had it first, well, he should get all the credit. Also coming with, of course, his trademark big yellow spiky club thingy. That's the technical term, by the way. But what most makes Mekaneck stand out is his action feature. He had a twist waist, which caused his neck to rise out of his body. The mechanism was inside of his chest, and a simple twist caused it to rise up about half an inch. It wasn't spectacularly high, but it was enough that made him really stand out. And when it came time to putting him in the Masters of the Universe Classics line, well, Mekaneck was a favorite of mine as a kid. Usually the figures I had as a kid were the ones that were my favorite. And I really wanted to do him justice. I mean, the neck only came out so far because it had to be fully enclosed inside of the chest. But with Classics, because action features were done with snap-on parts and not with mechanisms, because that would have been too expensive, it was actually very easy to recreate Mekaneck's action feature in a collector toy simply by having a very long neck piece that could snap on. In fact, it was almost, well, it was over 12 inches, so he could go eye to eye with a 12-inch action figure. So we also included a standard piece, so it would just be about 1.5 inches high, similar to the vintage figure, but still taller proportion-wise. But it gave him the ability that if you really wanted his neck to stand out and you could see his, his head peering out from your collection, well, that was what it was all about. And it was really, honestly, a joy that the vintage action feature was so easy to recreate using snap-on parts in Classics, and to actually improve on the action feature, because we didn't get to do that often, actually making the action feature that defined a vintage figure, and not all the figures were defined by their action feature. Manny Faces, Mekaneck were two of them. And when Mekaneck showed up in the 2000X series, his sort of neck-growing ability was, to the extreme. And, he even got his own episode where he feels sorry for himself, like his powers aren't cool enough. And honestly, I have to tell you, if I had anyone's powers in Masters of the Universe, it would absolutely be Mekaneck, because I'm always feeling like I want to look above crowds or, down the freeway through traffic. I actually really wanted to make the neck look like this in the Classics figure, like a super bendy ZL kind of thing, where you could snap this on and his neck was going to, be all over the place. But unfortunately, we couldn't cost that in. So we just did a regular neck, nor could we do the snake version. This would have been a whole other figure when Mekaneck becomes a snake man for a little while, much like Man-at-Arms and Tila. So we were basically settled for small neck piece and extra, extra long neck piece. But it was kind of enough, and I don't think there were fans lamenting they didn't get the twisty L shape that I kind of wanted to do in my fantasy. We weren't even going to be able to fit that in the blister. I mean, there was no way. So we would have had to make him a deluxe figure if we did that. And I had a long conversation with the Horseman. It was also a chance to give him an origin, to explain how his neck worked, and lo and behold, we used nanites.
Nanotech, you like it?
Because, it was ever growing, and the idea was that he had damaged his neck in service to the royal family, and Duncan had helped replace his neck with nanotechnology that could constantly, expand and either grow or shrink, depending on how big he wanted his neck to be. Otherwise, it was a little hard to justify where in the world the neck went when it retracted back into his body. So the idea of nanites that were ever either expanding themselves or compressing was a way of trying to explain how the neck powers actually worked, because we all know fans want everything explained except when they don't. And that's also why Mekaneck is a spy, because his ability to see over everything else and to see over forests and castles and dams and all sorts of things is what made him very valuable to the Masters, not just as a warrior, but by being able to see long distances and stretch that neck as far as he needed to. That was his his use and his superpower, and why he feels bad for himself for a while. His design is clearly influenced by the Fourth World comic. So much Fourth World art you can see showing up in Masters of the Universe because, as I've noted in some previous videos, Mattel was working on a Fourth World Jack Kirby line right before they worked on Masters. So all of that work that they put into that didn't get used because the line didn't go to market clearly got recycled into the design concepts for Masters of the Universe. And you can see that very much in his armor and especially in his helmet. In fact, if you flip through a couple Fourth World trade paperbacks, you can pretty much see characters that look exactly like Mekaneck. They don't have the furry shorts, but the head and the goggles are right there. And it's all part of the fact that, when you work on a toy and you spend years working on design only to have it go nowhere, well, you want to see, that kind of pay off. And you want to see all the design work you did actually be used. So it got recycled into the Masters of the Universe line. And Mekaneck is one of those prime examples. Probably him and Zodak are two of the clearest, where you can see so much Jack Kirby influence. One thing that fans did ask for, or rather customized a lot, was what does he look like under that helmet? Because we never actually get to see this. So there's a lot of fan customs out there, and some really good ones too. I am not a customizer. I cannot do this, but I'm always impressed with what fans do and how they use their imagination to think about what Mekaneck could look like if he took off that trademark Kirby Fourth Worldy Masters of the Universe spiky helmet, which, again, one of the more iconic helmets of Masters of the Universe. No one really has a helmet quite like him, and it's kind of neat to see how fans imagined he would look without his helmet. So Mekaneck was a lot of fun to bring into Classics, and he showed up in all the animation, and I'm looking forward to seeing him show up in some of the new stuff on Netflix, and he was great to bring into the line and to really take that action feature and take it to the next level. Because, like I said, it was so hard to do this, and many figures just kind of had to drop that action feature, but not with Mekaneck. He got the action feature sort of, all the way to 11. And it's great because if you have a huge shelf of Masters of the Universe figures, you can really spot him if, you have that full neck extension, even in the middle of a whole gang of figures. I really am proud of how he came out.